The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty general store, and Penelope Jameson knew with absolute certainty that she had made the worst mistake of her life. Redding, California looked nothing like the letters had promised. Through the grimy window, she could see a collection of weathered buildings huddled together, as if seeking protection from the endless expanse of wilderness surrounding them. It was June of 1878, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the dirt streets, creating shimmering waves of heat that made the whole town appear like a mirage that might vanish at any moment. Penelope gathered her worn carpetbag and stepped down from the coach, her legs trembling from both the long journey and the fear that had been building in her chest for the past 3 days. She was 22 years old, alone in the world, and about to meet a man she had corresponded with for only 6 weeks. A man who had promised her a home, security, and companionship. She had been careful never to promise him love, because that particular emotion had died in her heart 2 years ago when Thomas had married her sister instead. "Miss Jameson," a reedy voice cut through her thoughts. Penelope turned to find a man of perhaps 50 years standing before her, his hat clutched nervously in his weathered hands. He was shorter than she had imagined, with thinning gray hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. This was supposed to be Isaac Edwards, her intended husband, the rancher who had placed an advertisement seeking a wife to help manage his household. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. "Mr. Edwards?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "No, miss." "I am afraid I have some difficult news." The man twisted his hat in his hands. "My name is Henry Porter. I am the undertaker here in Redding. Mr. Edwards, well, he passed on about 3 weeks ago. Heart gave out while he was mending a fence. It was peaceful, if that is any comfort." The words hit Penelope like a physical blow. She stood frozen, unable to process what she was hearing. Dead. The man who was supposed to marry her, to give her a new life, was dead, and she was standing in a town where she knew no one, with exactly $17 to her name and nowhere to go. "I am so sorry, Miss Jameson," Henry continued, his voice genuinely apologetic. "We tried to send word, but you must have already left Boston by the time we got your address from Mr. Edwards' papers. The ranch, well, it is going to his nephew, young fellow by the name of Isaac Emerson. He arrived from Texas about a week ago to settle the estate." Penelope forced herself to breathe. In, out, in, out. She would not cry. She had cried enough tears over the past 2 years to last a lifetime, and she had promised herself on that stagecoach that she would never shed another tear over circumstances beyond her control. "I see. Thank you for telling me, Mr. Porter. The thing is, Miss Isaac, the nephew that is, he is up at the ranch now. It is about 5 miles north of here. I could take you out there if you like. Maybe he could help you figure out what to do next. He seems like a decent sort, even if he is a bit rough around the edges." Penelope wanted to refuse. She wanted to maintain what little dignity she had left, but practical concerns overrode her pride. She had no money for a return ticket to Boston, even if she had anywhere to return to. Her stepmother had made it abundantly clear that Penelope was no longer welcome in the family home, especially not after Thomas had married Catherine. The humiliation of being cast aside for her own sister still burned like acid in her chest. "That is very kind of you, Mr. Porter," she heard herself say. The wagon ride to the Edwards ranch took nearly an hour over rutted roads that wound through golden hills dotted with oak trees. Penelope sat in silence, watching the landscape pass by and wondering how she had ended up in this impossible situation. She had once been a school teacher in Boston, respected and independent. Then Thomas had happened. Thomas with his promises and his sweet words, courting her for 8 months, before suddenly announcing his engagement to Catherine. The scandal had cost Penelope her position. No one wanted a school teacher who had been publicly jilted, even though she had done nothing wrong. The ranch, when it finally came into view, was more substantial than she had expected. A two-story house with a wide porch stood at the center of the property, surrounded by several outbuildings and corrals. Cattle grazed in distant fields, their forms hazy in the afternoon heat. It could have been beautiful, Penelope thought, if she was not seeing it through the lens of her current desperation. A man emerged from the barn as the wagon approached. Even from a distance, Penelope could see that he was tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the easy confidence of someone completely comfortable in his surroundings. As they drew closer, she could make out more details. He appeared to be in his late 20s, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days' worth of stubble on his strong jaw. His shirt was dusty and sweat-stained, and he wore a gun belt low on his hips. This was Isaac Emerson, and Penelope felt a flutter of something she could not quite name in her chest. She pushed it down firmly. That kind of thinking had led to nothing but heartache before. Isaac approached the wagon, his gray eyes wary. "Henry," he acknowledged with a nod, then his gaze shifted to Penelope. She saw confusion cross his features, followed by what might have been understanding. "Isaac, this is Miss Penelope Jameson," Henry said, his voice apologetic. "She came all the way from Boston to marry your uncle." Did not get word that he had passed before she left. Something flickered in Isaac's eyes. Sympathy, perhaps, or maybe pity. Penelope lifted her chin, refusing to look away. She had done nothing to be ashamed of. "I see," Isaac said slowly. His voice was deep and rough, like stones tumbling in a creek. "That is a hell of a situation, pardon my language." "I apologize for the intrusion, Mr. Emerson," Penelope said, finding her voice. "I will impose on your hospitality only long enough to determine how to return to the East. If you could perhaps direct me to where I might find employment in town to earn passage money, I would be grateful." Isaac studied her for a long moment, and Penelope felt heat rise to her cheeks under his scrutiny. She kept her expression neutral, even as her heart hammered in her chest. "Not much call for work in Reading," Isaac finally said. "Town is not much bigger than what you saw coming through. Besides, it would take you months to save up enough for a ticket back east, even if you could find something." He paused, seeming to consider something. "My uncle's letters to you, they mentioned you would help run the household." "Yes," Penelope confirmed. "I was a school teacher before, and I know how to manage a home. Cook, clean, keep accounts." "Your uncle indicated he had a housekeeper who had recently left, and he needed help with the domestic side of running the ranch." "That part is true enough," Isaac admitted. "Mrs. Chen left about 2 months back to live with her daughter in Sacramento. Place has been falling apart without her. I cannot cook worth a damn, begging your pardon again, and the house is a disaster." He seemed to be working through something in his mind. "Look, I did not expect this situation any more than you did. I had a horse ranch in Texas until a month ago. Uncle Edward's letter reached me just after I sold my place. Was planning to make a fresh start here, but I was not counting on having to worry about running a household on top of learning cattle ranching." "What are you proposing, Mr. Emerson?" Penelope asked carefully. "I am proposing that we strike a deal," Isaac said. "You need a place to stay and a way to earn money. I need someone to manage the house. You work for me. I pay you fair wages, and once you have saved enough, you can head back east or wherever you want to go. In the meantime, you will have a roof over your head and 3 meals a day." Henry cleared his throat. "Folks in town might talk, Isaac. Young woman living alone with a bachelor." "Then she can have the entire upstairs," Isaac replied. "I will bed down in the foreman's cabin." That is empty since Joe retired last month. It is not perfect, but it is practical, and it solves both our problems. Penelope knew she should refuse. A respectable woman did not move onto a strange man's ranch, wages or no wages. But what choice did she have? She could use her $17 to get a room in town for perhaps 2 weeks if she was frugal, and then what? Henry had said there was little work available. She could end up destitute with no options at all. Fair wages, she asked, and I would be free to leave whenever I wish. Fair wages, Isaac confirmed, and you can leave any time. I am not looking to trap you here, Miss Jameson, just offering a solution to a difficult problem. She took a deep breath, considering her options one more time, then nodded. Very well, Mr. Emerson, I accept your offer. Henry looked between them uncertainly. You sure about this, both of you? Not much choice for either of us, Isaac said bluntly. Miss Jameson needs work and I need help. We are both adults and we can manage the situation with propriety. After Henry left, Isaac showed Penelope into the house. The interior confirmed his assessment. Dust covered every surface, dirty dishes were stacked in the kitchen, and the whole place had the neglected air of a home without a woman's touch. But the bones of it were good. The furniture was solid and well made, the windows let in plenty of light, and Penelope could see that with some work it could be quite comfortable. Upstairs has 3 bedrooms, Isaac said, leading the way. This one here was my uncle's. You can take this one or one of the others, whatever suits you. Linens are in the chest there, probably need washing, but they are clean enough to use for now. Penelope set her carpetbag down in the largest bedroom, looking around at the space that would be hers, at least temporarily. The bed was large, covered with a faded quilt, and a washstand stood in the corner. A window looked out over the front of the property, giving a view of the golden hills in the distance. I will cook us some supper, Isaac said from the doorway. Fair warning, it will not be good. Tomorrow you can take over the kitchen and probably save us both from food poisoning. Despite everything, Penelope felt a small smile tug at her lips. I will do my best to keep us both alive, Mr. Emerson. Isaac, he corrected. If we are going to be living on the same property, might as well drop the formalities. I will call you Penelope if that is all right. That is fine, she agreed, though saying his name felt strangely intimate. That night, Penelope lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the sounds of the California night outside her window. Crickets chirped, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. She thought about Thomas and Catherine, probably settled into their married life back in Boston. She thought about her stepmother's cold dismissal when Penelope had needed support most. And she thought about the tall, rough cowboy who had offered her a lifeline when he had no reason to do so. Sleep was a long time coming. The next morning, Penelope woke before dawn, a habit from her teaching days that she had never broken. She dressed in one of her simple work dresses, pinned her blonde hair into a sensible bun, and made her way downstairs. The kitchen was even worse in the morning light than it had appeared the previous evening. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. By the time Isaac appeared 2 hours later, Penelope had the kitchen scrubbed clean, breakfast cooking on the stove, and coffee brewing. He stopped in the doorway, staring at the transformation with something like wonder on his face. Is that bacon I smell? He asked. Bacon, eggs, and biscuits, Penelope confirmed, flipping the bacon in the pan. I found some preserves in the pantry that are still good. There is plenty if you are hungry. Hungry does not begin to cover it, Isaac said, moving to the table. I have been living on hardtack and whatever I could cobble together for weeks now. They ate in companionable silence, and Penelope found herself studying Isaac when she thought he was not looking. In the morning light, she could see the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the weariness that suggested he had been working himself too hard. His hands were calloused and scarred, the hands of a man who knew hard labor. "You said you had a horse ranch in Texas," she asked, breaking the silence. Isaac nodded, swallowing a bite of biscuit. "Had a small place outside of San Antonio. Bred and trained horses for the cavalry. Did pretty well at it too. But my uncle's letter came at a time when I was ready for a change. Sold everything and came west." "Why were you ready for a change?" The question was out before Penelope could stop herself. "I apologize, that is too personal." "No, it is all right," Isaac said, though his expression had closed off slightly. "Had some trouble with a business partner. Nothing illegal, just unpleasant. Figured a fresh start was in order." He paused. "What about you? What made you decide to answer a mail-order bride advertisement?" Now it was Penelope's turn to hesitate. She did not want to tell this stranger about Thomas, about the humiliation and heartbreak, but he had been honest with her, and she owed him the same courtesy. "I was engaged," she said carefully, "or I thought I was. He courted me for 8 months, made promises about our future. Then he married my sister instead. The scandal cost me my teaching position, and my stepmother made it clear I was no longer welcome at home. Your uncle's advertisement seemed like an escape from a situation that had become unbearable." Isaac's gray eyes were steady on her face. "That is a hell of a thing to do to someone. Your sister and this man, they did not care what it cost you." "Apparently not," Penelope said, forcing her voice to remain level. "They are married now, presumably happy, and I am here." "Their loss," Isaac said firmly. "Any man fool enough to choose someone else after courting you does not deserve a second thought." The unexpected compliment made Penelope's cheeks warm. She busied herself with clearing the plates to hide her reaction. "That is kind of you to say." "Not kind, just honest," Isaac replied, standing to help with the dishes. "You came all this way ready to make a life with a stranger. That takes courage. Your former beau was an idiot." Over the following days, Penelope threw herself into the work of making the house a home again. She scrubbed and cleaned, organized the pantry, mended curtains, and beat the dust out of every rug and cushion. Isaac spent his days working the ranch, often leaving before dawn and returning after sunset, exhausted and covered in dirt. But he always made time to eat the meals Penelope prepared, and slowly they began to talk. She learned that Isaac had grown up in Texas, the son of a horse trainer. He had learned the trade from his father and had been on his own since he was 20, when both his parents had died of fever within a week of each other. He spoke little of his business partner troubles, but Penelope gathered that it had involved a woman and betrayal, though he never gave details. Isaac learned that Penelope had been teaching since she was 18, that she loved books and learning, that she had once dreamed of opening her own school for girls. He learned that she played piano, though there had been no piano in her stepmother's house after her father died. And he learned that, despite her heartbreak, she had not entirely given up on the idea of happiness. Even if she had given up on the idea of love, 3 weeks into her stay at the ranch, Penelope was hanging laundry when she heard the sound of horses approaching. She looked up to see 3 men riding toward the house, and something about their manner made her uneasy. She set down the laundry basket and moved toward the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. The men dismounted, and the one in the lead, a man with a scarred face and cold eyes, tipped his hat in her direction. "Afternoon, madam. We are looking for Isaac Emerson. He around?" "He is out checking the cattle," Penelope said, keeping her voice steady despite the flutter of fear in her chest. "Can I tell him who came calling?" "Name is Dale Morrison," the man said. "We have some business to discuss with Mr. Emerson. We will wait." There was something threatening in his tone, and Penelope felt her unease grow. "You are welcome to wait in the yard," she said. I will fetch him for you." She turned to go, but Morrison's voice stopped her. "No need to trouble yourself, madam. We will find him ourselves." Before Penelope could respond, Isaac appeared around the corner of the barn, his hand resting casually on his gun belt. "I am right here, Morrison. State your business." Morrison's smile was cold. "Just wanted to have a friendly conversation, Emerson. See, your uncle owed some folks money before he died. Gambling debts. Now that you have inherited the place, those debts pass to you." "My uncle's estate went through probate," Isaac said, his voice hard. "All legitimate debts were settled. If you have a claim, take it up with the lawyer in Sacramento who handled everything." "This was not that kind of debt," Morrison said, his hand drifting toward his gun. "This was personal. Your uncle borrowed $500 from my boss 6 months ago. We want it back with interest. That makes it $700 now." Penelope's heart was pounding, but she forced herself to stay still. She could see the tension in Isaac's shoulders, the way his fingers flexed near his gun. "I do not have any record of that debt," Isaac said carefully. "And I am not inclined to take your word for it. If your boss has documentation, he can present it properly. Otherwise, you can get off my land." Morrison's two companions spread out slightly, a subtle but unmistakable threat. "Maybe we need to convince you to be more cooperative," Morrison said. "Maybe you need to think about whether you want to draw on me," Isaac replied, his voice dangerously quiet. "Because I promise you it will not end well for you." The moment stretched out, taut as a wire. Penelope held her breath, afraid that any movement might snap the tension into violence. Then, slowly, Morrison smiled. "We will give you a week to think about it, Emerson," he said. "A week to come up with the money. After that, we will come back and we will not be so polite." The three men mounted their horses and rode off, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Isaac stood frozen for a long moment, then turned to Penelope. "Are you all right? Did they threaten you before I got here?" "I am fine," Penelope assured him, though her hands were shaking. "Who were those men?" "Trouble," Isaac said grimly. "Morrison works for Marcus Webb, a man who runs most of the criminal enterprise in this part of California. Gambling, protection rackets, you name it. If my uncle really did owe him money, then we have a problem." "But you said all the debts were settled," Penelope protested. "Legal debts were," Isaac confirmed. "But if Uncle Edward was gambling with Webb, he would not have reported that to the lawyer. Hell, he probably was ashamed of it." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "I do not have $700 lying around. I put everything I had into the place in Texas. The money from selling it went to pay off the mortgage on this place and cover the debts that were on record." Penelope felt a surge of determination. "Then we need to find out if the debt is legitimate. Surely someone in town would know if your uncle was gambling." Isaac looked at her for a long moment. "This is not your problem, Penelope. You are just working here. You should not have to worry about this." "If those men come back and cause trouble, it affects me too," Penelope pointed out. "Besides, you helped me when I had nowhere else to go. Let me help you now." Something shifted in Isaac's expression, a warmth that had not been there before. "All right," he said. "We will ride into town tomorrow and ask around. Maybe someone knows something." That evening, as they sat on the porch after supper, watching the sun set over the golden hills, Isaac spoke quietly. "I am sorry you got dragged into this, Penelope. You have had enough trouble in your life without adding mine to it." "It seems we both came here looking for a fresh start," Penelope replied. "Maybe we were meant to help each other through our troubles." Isaac looked at her, and in the fading light his eyes were soft. "Maybe so." Penelope felt her heart skip, and for the first time since Thomas had broken it, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she could feel something again. She pushed the thought away quickly. She was here to work, to earn money, and then to leave. Getting emotionally involved with Isaac would be foolish beyond measure. But as they sat there in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky, Penelope could not quite convince herself that it was foolish. It felt right, in a way nothing had felt right for a very long time. The next morning, they rode into Reading together. Isaac on a large bay gelding and Penelope on a gentle mare named Daisy. The town was quiet at mid-morning, with only a few people going about their business on the dusty main street. They stopped first at the general store, where the proprietor, a friendly man named Samuel Chen, greeted them warmly. "Mr. Chen," Isaac said after the initial pleasantries, "I need to ask you something. Did my uncle ever talk to you about gambling, or mention owing anyone money?" Samuel's expression grew troubled. "I did not know your uncle well, Mr. Emerson. He kept to himself mostly, but there were rumors about 6 months back. Some folks said they had seen him at Webb's place a few times, late at night. Webb runs a saloon on the edge of town, but everyone knows he has gambling in the back rooms." "Did anyone say how much my uncle might have lost?" Isaac pressed. "Nothing specific," Samuel admitted. "Just that he seemed worried the last few times I saw him. Like something was weighing heavy on his mind." They thanked Samuel and continued their inquiries around town. At the telegraph office, the blacksmith shop, and finally at the small church at the end of the main street, the story was the same. Edward Edwards had been seen going to Webb's saloon, and he had seemed troubled in the months before his death. But no one knew specifics, and no one wanted to get involved with Webb's business. "We need to talk to Webb directly," Isaac said as they stood outside the church. "Get the truth straight from him." "Is that wise?" Penelope asked. "He sounds dangerous." "Dangerous or not, I need to know if this debt is real," Isaac replied. "If it is, I will figure out a way to pay it, but I will not be extorted for money my uncle may not have actually owed." They found Marcus Webb's saloon at the far edge of town, a ramshackle building that looked like it might collapse in a strong wind. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the smell of cheap whiskey. Several men sat at tables, their eyes tracking Isaac and Penelope as they entered. Marcus Webb himself was behind the bar, a large man with graying hair and a face that might have been handsome once but was now marked by dissipation. He looked up as they approached, his eyes narrowing. "Isaac Emerson," he said, his voice a low rumble. "I was wondering when you would come calling." "I want to see documentation of my uncle's debt," Isaac said without preamble. "If he owed you money, there should be a record." Webb smiled, showing stained teeth. "This is not the kind of business where we keep formal records, Emerson. Your uncle was a regular at my tables for about 3 months. He lost steadily, and when he could not pay, I gave him credit. By the time he died, he owed me $500, plus interest. Convenient that he is dead and cannot confirm or deny your story," Isaac said coldly. Webb's smile vanished. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I am saying I want proof," Isaac replied. "And without it, I am not paying you a cent." The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Penelope saw several of Webb's men shift, their hands moving toward weapons. Her heart hammered, but she forced herself to stand still beside Isaac, showing no fear. "You have 1 week," Webb said finally. "Bring me $700, or I will take it out of your hide and maybe out of your pretty housekeeper's hide too." Isaac's hand moved to his gun, but Penelope grabbed his arm. "Let us go," she said quietly. "This is not the place." For a moment she thought Isaac might ignore her, might draw his gun and damn the consequences. Then, slowly, he nodded. 1 week, he said to Webb. "And then we will settle this one way or another." Outside, Isaac was shaking with anger. "He threatened you," he said, his voice tight. "He actually threatened you." "I know," Penelope said, though she was frightened, but getting into a gunfight in his saloon would not have helped anything. We need to think this through. They rode back to the ranch in tense silence. Penelope's mind was racing, trying to think of solutions. $700 was a fortune, more money than she would earn in years of teaching. There was no way Isaac could come up with that much in a week, not without selling the ranch itself. That evening, as Penelope prepared supper, Isaac came into the kitchen. "I have been thinking," he said. "I could sell off some of the cattle. It would not get me all the way to 700, but it would be a start. Maybe Webb would accept payments." "Maybe," Penelope said, though she doubted it. Men like Webb did not strike her as the patient type. "Or," Isaac continued, his voice hesitant, "I could sell the ranch. Take whatever I can get for it, pay off Webb, and we both move on. You would have your passage money east, and I could start over somewhere else." Penelope set down the spoon she had been using to stir the stew. "You would give up the ranch, after coming all this way?" "I would rather give up the ranch than see you get hurt because of my uncle's mistakes," Isaac said quietly. "You should not be in danger because of me." The sincerity in his voice made Penelope's chest ache. "There has to be another way," she said. "We just need to think of it." Over the next several days, they racked their brains for solutions. Isaac looked into selling cattle, but the process would take weeks to arrange properly, longer than they had. He considered taking out a loan, but no bank would lend him that much without collateral he did not have. Every option seemed to lead to a dead end. On the 5th day after Morrison's visit, Penelope was in the kitchen making bread when she heard horses approaching again. Her stomach dropped, fearing it was Webb's men returning early. But when she looked out the window, she saw a single rider, an older man on a tired-looking horse. Isaac came out of the barn as the man dismounted. Penelope watched from the window as they spoke, saw Isaac's expression shift from wariness to surprise. When they came into the house together, Isaac's eyes were bright with something that looked like hope. "Penelope, this is Walter Green," Isaac said. "He was a friend of my uncle's." Walter was a weathered man in his 60s, with kind eyes and a gentle manner. "Miss Jameson," he said, tipping his hat. "Isaac tells me you are having trouble with Marcus Webb. You know about the debt?" Penelope asked. "I know Edward did not owe Webb any $700, Walter said firmly. "Edward and I played cards together regularly. He was not much of a gambler, and he certainly did not have the kind of money to lose $500 at Webb's tables. Webb is lying, trying to extort money from Isaac now that Edward is not here to defend himself." Relief flooded through Penelope. "Then we can expose him." "It is not that simple," Walter said, his expression troubled. "Webb is a dangerous man, and he has half the sheriff's office in his pocket. My word against his would not count for much, but I have been thinking about this since I heard Webb was making these claims. Edward kept journals, meticulous records of his finances, every penny he spent. If those journals still exist, they would prove he did not lose that kind of money gambling." "Where would they be?" Isaac asked urgently. "Edward's desk," Walter said. "He had a locked drawer where he kept his private papers." "Do you know if you have seen a small brass key among his effects?" Isaac's face fell. "The desk was already open when I arrived. I assumed the lawyer had gone through everything." Penelope's mind was racing. "The desk is in the study. Let me look through it. Maybe the journals are still there, even if the drawer is unlocked." She hurried to the study, Isaac and Walter following close behind. The desk was a substantial piece of furniture with multiple drawers. She had tidied the study days ago, but had not paid much attention to the contents of the desk, assuming they were just ranch business papers. Now she went through each drawer systematically, removing papers and examining them. Bills of sale for cattle, correspondence about ranch business, receipts for supplies, but no journals. She was beginning to despair when her fingers found a small leather-bound book wedged at the very back of the bottom drawer. "I found something," she said, pulling it out. It was a journal, the pages filled with neat handwriting. Edward Edwards' financial records dating back 3 years. Isaac took it from her carefully and began to flip through the pages, Walter looking over his shoulder. "Here," Walter said, pointing to an entry. "6 months ago. This is when Webb claims Edward started gambling. But look, every expense is accounted for. Supplies, wages for the hands, feed for the cattle. There is nothing here about gambling losses." "Could he have hidden it?" Isaac asked. "Not written it down because he was ashamed." "Edward recorded everything," Walter insisted. "Even the embarrassing stuff. Look here, he even noted when he overpaid for that bull that turned out to be infertile. He would not have hidden gambling debts." Isaac flipped through more pages, his expression growing more confident. "This is it," he said. "This proves Webb is lying." "Now we just need to figure out how to use it," Penelope said. Walter stroked his beard thoughtfully. "The territorial judge is due to pass through Reading next week. He holds court for more serious matters. If we could present this evidence to him, he might be willing to investigate Webb's claims." "Next week is too late," Isaac said. "Morrison said we have 1 week, and that is up in 2 days. "Then we buy more time," Penelope said, an idea forming in her mind. "Isaac, what if you went to Webb and told him you are working on getting the money, but you need a few more days? Act like you are cooperating. Meanwhile, we get the journal to the judge as soon as he arrives." "Webb will not believe I can get that much money in a few more days," Isaac pointed out. "Then make him believe you are desperate enough to try," Penelope said. "Tell him you are negotiating a loan or trying to sell cattle. Whatever you need to say to buy us time until the judge gets here." Isaac looked at her with something like admiration. "That might actually work." Walter nodded. "It is risky, but I do not see another option, and I will testify to the judge about Edward's character and his habits. Between my testimony and the journal, we should have a strong case." That evening, Isaac rode into town to speak with Webb. Penelope spent the time pacing the kitchen, unable to settle to any task. She kept imagining all the ways the plan could go wrong. What if Webb did not believe Isaac? What if he decided to take action immediately instead of waiting? What if Isaac got hurt? The realization that she cared deeply about Isaac's safety hit her like a physical blow. Somewhere over the past weeks, without her even realizing it, the lonely cowboy had worked his way past her defenses. She cared about him, worried about him, wanted him to be safe and happy. The knowledge terrified her. She had sworn never to let herself be vulnerable again. Love had brought her nothing but pain, but what she felt for Isaac was different from what she had felt for Thomas. With Thomas, it had been excitement and flattery, the thrill of being courted and desired. With Isaac, it was steadier, deeper. It was the comfort of his presence, the respect he showed her, the way they worked together as partners. It was real in a way her feelings for Thomas had never been. When Isaac finally returned well after dark, Penelope met him at the door. "What happened?" "He bought it," Isaac said, relief evident in his voice. "I told him I was trying to arrange a sale of some cattle and needed 3 more days. He was not happy, but he agreed. Said if I do not have the money by then, he will burn the ranch down with us in it." Penelope shuddered. "He actually said that, word for word," Isaac confirmed. He looked at her closely. "You are pale. Are you all right?" "I am fine," Penelope lied. "Just worried." Isaac stepped closer, and Penelope could smell the scent of leather and sage that seemed to cling to him. "We are going to get through this," he said softly. "I promise." "You cannot promise that," Penelope replied. "You do not know what Webb will do." "Maybe not," Isaac admitted. But I know I will do everything in my power to keep you safe. You have to believe that." She did believe it. That was the problem. She believed in Isaac in a way she had never believed in anyone before, and that trust was terrifying. The next 2 days crawled by. Walter sent word that the judge had arrived in town a day early, and he had arranged for a hearing. Isaac and Penelope rode into Reading together, the journal safely tucked in Isaac's saddlebag. Judge Harrison Carter was a stern-looking man in his 50s, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He listened carefully as Isaac presented the situation. Walter gave his testimony, and the journal was entered as evidence. Webb was also present, his expression growing darker as the hearing progressed. "This journal appears quite comprehensive," Judge Carter said, examining the pages. "And Mr. Green's testimony about Mr. Edwards' character is compelling. Mr. Webb, do you have any documentation to support your claim that Mr. Edwards owed you money?" "It was a gentleman's agreement," Webb said, his voice tight. "We did not write nothing down." "How convenient," the judge said dryly. "In the absence of any evidence to support your claim, and in light of the evidence that contradicts it, I find that Mr. Emerson owes you nothing. Furthermore, I am ordering you to cease any harassment of Mr. Emerson or anyone associated with him. If I hear reports of you continuing to press this fraudulent claim, I will have you arrested for attempted extortion. Am I clear?" Webb's face was purple with rage, but he managed a tight nod. "Clear, Your Honor." Outside the courthouse, Isaac let out a long breath. "It is over," he said, sounding almost dazed. "It is actually over." "Thanks to you," Walter said, clapping Isaac on the shoulder, "and to Miss Jameson here. Quick thinking getting that journal to the judge." Penelope felt herself flush with pleasure at the praise. "I am just glad it worked." As they rode back to the ranch that afternoon, Penelope felt lighter than she had in weeks. The threat was gone, and they could return to normal life. Except, she was no longer sure what normal was, or if she even wanted things to go back to the way they had been. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Isaac spoke quietly. "You could go now if you wanted. I have enough saved up to give you passage money east. You have more than earned it." Penelope's heart sank. Of course. Their arrangement had been temporary, just until she saved enough to leave. Isaac was releasing her from her obligation. "Do you want me to go?" "Hell no," Isaac said, the words bursting out of him. "I do not want you to go anywhere, but you came here to earn money and get back to your life. Now you can do that. I do not want to keep you here if you want to be somewhere else." "What if I do not want to be somewhere else?" Penelope asked softly. Isaac turned to look at her, hope and fear warring in his expression. "What are you saying, Penelope?" "I am saying that somewhere along the way this place started to feel like home," she admitted. "And you started to feel like someone I could not imagine leaving." She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I came here thinking love was impossible, that I would never trust anyone with my heart again. But you made me believe again, Isaac. You made me believe that maybe I could be happy, that maybe I could love someone and not have it end in heartbreak." Isaac reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm around hers. "I was not looking for love either," he said. "I had my own reasons for thinking it was not for me, but then you showed up and everything changed. You are smart and brave and kind, and these past weeks with you have been the best of my life. I do not want you to go, Penelope. I want you to stay, not as my housekeeper but as my partner, my wife, if you will have me." Penelope's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. "Are you proposing to me?" "I know I am doing this backwards," Isaac said, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "You came here to marry a man you had never met, and now here I am, a different man entirely, asking the same thing. But the difference is we know each other now. We have been through hard times together. And I love you, Penelope. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Tears were streaming down Penelope's face, but for the first time in years they were happy tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you, Isaac. I love you too." Isaac pulled her into his arms, and when he kissed her, it was like coming home. All the heartbreak, all the loneliness, all the pain of the past years faded away, replaced by joy and hope and love. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Reading, with Walter Green standing up as Isaac's witness and the minister's wife standing up for Penelope. It was a simple ceremony, nothing like the elaborate wedding Penelope had once dreamed of having with Thomas. But it was perfect because it was real and honest and full of love. That night, as Penelope lay in Isaac's arms in the bed they now shared, she marveled at how much her life had changed in just a few short months. She had come to California expecting to marry a stranger out of desperation and necessity. Instead, she had found a true partner, a man who respected and cherished her, who made her laugh and feel safe and loved. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac murmured, his hand stroking her hair. "How grateful I am," Penelope said, "for all of it, even the hard parts. Because they led me here to you." "I am the grateful one," Isaac replied, kissing her forehead. "You gave me something I thought I had lost, hope, a future worth looking forward to." Over the following months, they built their life together at the ranch. Penelope continued to manage the household, but now she also helped Isaac with the business side of running the ranch, keeping the books and corresponding with buyers. She started a small vegetable garden near the house and ordered books from San Francisco, building a library in what had been Edward's study. Isaac hired 2 ranch hands to help with the cattle, and the ranch began to thrive. They talked about expanding, maybe breeding horses like Isaac had done in Texas. They talked about the future, about children, about growing old together on this land they both loved. When Penelope's monthly courses failed to appear in October, 5 months after their marriage, she waited 2 weeks to be sure before telling Isaac. She found him in the barn, repairing a saddle, and the words tumbled out in a rush. "I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Isaac dropped the saddle and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. "A baby," he kept repeating. "We are having a baby." Their son was born in June of 1879, a healthy baby boy with his father's gray eyes and a surprisingly loud cry. They named him Edward after Isaac's uncle, the man whose death had inadvertently brought them together. As Penelope held little Edward in her arms, Isaac beside her on the bed, she felt a peace she had never known before. "He is perfect," Isaac said, his voice filled with wonder as he touched one tiny hand. "He is," Penelope agreed. "Just perfect." The years that followed were not always easy. Ranching was hard work, and there were droughts and cattle diseases and all the 1,000 challenges that came with frontier life. But they faced everything together, supporting each other through the hard times and celebrating the good times. In 1881, their daughter was born, and they named her Catherine, after Penelope's sister. It had taken time, but Penelope had eventually made peace with the past. She had even corresponded with Catherine, who had written a heartfelt letter apologizing for the pain she had caused. The reconciliation was not complete, but it was a start, and Penelope found that she could forgive, even if she could not forget. In 1884, they had another son whom they named Walter, after the friend who had helped them in their time of need. Walter Green had become a regular visitor to the ranch, a beloved uncle figure to their children. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Isaac started breeding horses alongside the cattle, combining his Texas expertise with California's growing demand for quality mounts. Penelope started teaching the local children twice a week in the study that had become a schoolroom, fulfilling her old dream of educating young minds. In 1889, when Penelope was 33 and Isaac was 35, they sat on the same porch where Isaac had proposed all those years ago, watching their 3 children play in the yard. Edward was 10, strong and responsible like his father. Catherine was 8, curious and bright like her mother. And Walter was 5, full of mischief and joy. "You ever think about how it might have been different?" Isaac asked. "If my uncle had not died, if you had married him instead?" Penelope considered the question carefully. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But only to be grateful that things happened the way they did. I would not change anything, Isaac, not a single moment of it." "Not even the hard parts?" Isaac asked. "Not even those," Penelope confirmed. "Because they made us who we are, they brought us together." Isaac pulled her close, and Penelope rested her head on his shoulder, content in a way she had never imagined possible during that terrifying stagecoach ride to Reading all those years ago. In 1895, their 4th child was born, a surprise daughter they named Hope, because that was what they had given each other when they both thought happiness was impossible. By then, Edward was 16 and helping run the ranch, already showing signs of becoming the fine man his father was. Catherine was 14 and talking about becoming a teacher like her mother. Walter was 11 and obsessed with horses, spending every spare moment in the barn. The ranch had become one of the most successful in the region, known for both its cattle and its horses. Isaac had built a reputation as a fair dealer and an honest man, and Penelope's school had grown until they had built a proper schoolhouse in town, with Penelope as the head teacher. When Marcus Webb died in 1897, shot in a gambling dispute in Sacramento, Isaac and Penelope felt only a distant sense of closure. That threat had been vanquished so long ago that it seemed like it had happened to different people. In a way, it had. They were not the desperate, lonely people who had struck a bargain in 1878. They were partners, lovers, friends, parents. They were everything to each other. In 1903, Edward married a lovely young woman named Sarah, the daughter of a rancher from the next county over. The wedding was held at the ranch, and as Penelope watched her son promise to love and cherish his bride, she squeezed Isaac's hand, remembering their own simple wedding ceremony so many years before. "He looks happy," Isaac whispered. "He is," Penelope replied, "just like his father." Catherine had indeed become a teacher, opening a school for girls in San Francisco in 1899. She visited regularly, full of stories about her students and the exciting life in the city. Walter had gone into partnership with his father, and the horse breeding program had become famous throughout California and beyond. And little Hope, well, Hope was growing into a spirited young woman who had inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's determination. At 8 years old, she already had opinions about everything and was not afraid to share them. As Penelope and Isaac grew older, they never lost the deep connection that had formed during those early days of uncertainty and danger. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the golden hills. They still talked about everything and nothing, finding joy in each other's company. In 1908, when Penelope was 52 and Isaac was 55, they became grandparents for the first time. Edward and Sarah's son, named Isaac after his grandfather, was born on a clear spring morning, and when Penelope held him for the first time, she felt the circle of life turning, bringing new joy and new beginnings. "We did well," Isaac said, standing beside her as she rocked the baby. "We did," Penelope agreed. "Better than well. We built something beautiful. We built a family, Isaac said. A real, lasting family that is more than I ever thought I would have. More grandchildren followed over the years. Edward and Sarah had 3 children in total. Catherine eventually married a lawyer in San Francisco and had 2 daughters. Walter married in 1910 and had 4 children, continuing the ranch tradition into the next generation. Hope, their youngest, was courted by several young men but was in no hurry to marry. She went to college, one of the first women in the family to do so, studying literature and history. She eventually married a professor in 1915 when she was 20, and they settled in Sacramento, where she taught at the university. Through it all, Isaac and Penelope remained each other's constants. They weathered the changes of the new century together, watching as cars began to replace horses, as electricity came to the ranch, as the world transformed around them. But their love remained steady and true, the foundation upon which everything else was built. In 1920, they celebrated their 42nd wedding anniversary with a party at the ranch that drew people from all over the county. Their children and grandchildren were there, along with friends and neighbors, all gathered to honor the couple who had become pillars of the community. As the sun set on that warm June evening, Isaac led Penelope onto the dance floor that had been set up in the yard. The band played a waltz and they moved together with the ease of decades of practice. "You remember the first time we danced?" Isaac asked. "Our wedding," Penelope replied. "You stepped on my feet 3 times." "I did not," Isaac protested, laughing. "You did," Penelope insisted. "But I did not mind. I was too happy to care." "I am still making you happy?" Isaac asked, suddenly serious. "Every day," Penelope said. "For 42 years you have made me happy every single day." "Good," Isaac said, pulling her closer, "because that is all I have ever wanted. To make you happy, to love you, to build a life with you. You gave me everything, Penelope. Everything I ever wanted and more than I knew I could have." "You gave me the same," Penelope replied, tears in her eyes. "You made me believe in love again. You made me believe in happiness and hope and second chances. You saved me, Isaac." "We saved each other," Isaac corrected gently. "We were both lost, and we found our way together." As they danced under the stars, surrounded by the family they had created and the life they had built, Penelope thought about that terrified young woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Reading 42 years ago. She had been so certain that love was impossible, that happiness was beyond her reach. She had been wrong. Love was not only possible, it was the most real and enduring thing in the world. And happiness was not something that happened to you. It was something you built day by day with the person you loved. Isaac had taught her that. Together, they had created a love story that had lasted a lifetime and would continue in their children and grandchildren for generations to come. In 1925, Isaac and Penelope were both in their 70s, still living on the ranch they loved, still working side by side even if their work was less physical than it had been in their younger years. Isaac spent his days consulting with Walter and his grandson Isaac about the ranch operations, sharing his lifetime of wisdom with the younger generations. Penelope still taught occasionally, tutoring children who needed extra help, and she had started writing down her memories, creating a family history for her grandchildren and great-grandchildren to read. One evening in late September, as they sat on their beloved porch watching the sunset, Isaac took Penelope's hand in his. His hands were gnarled with arthritis now, but his grip was still strong. "I want you to know something," he said quietly. "Every single day I have spent with you has been a gift. Every morning I wake up next to you, I thank God for the day my uncle died." "Isaac," Penelope protested weakly. "It is true," Isaac insisted. I am sorry he died, but if he had not, I would never have met you. And a life without you in it would have been no life at all. You would have found someone else, Penelope said, though her voice shook. Maybe, Isaac conceded, but it would not have been you. And you are the only one I ever wanted, from that first day when you stepped off Henry's wagon with your chin up and your eyes full of determination. You were the bravest, most beautiful thing I had ever seen, and I have never stopped feeling that way. Penelope could not speak past the lump in her throat. After all these years, Isaac still had the power to move her to tears with his words. They sat in silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The ranch spread out before them, peaceful and prosperous. In the distance, they could hear the laughter of grandchildren playing, the sounds of family and life in continuity. "This is what heaven must be like," Penelope murmured. "If heaven is better than this, I cannot imagine it," Isaac replied. They were both slowing down as the years passed. Isaac's joints ached more in the mornings, and Penelope had to rest more often than she once had. But their minds were still sharp, and their love for each other never wavered. In 1928, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. The party was even larger than the one for their 42nd anniversary, with family coming from all over California to celebrate. They had 14 grandchildren now, ranging in age from 25 to 8, and 3 great-grandchildren, the beginning of yet another generation. As Penelope looked around at the crowd of people, all of them connected to her and Isaac, all of them part of the legacy they had built, she felt overwhelming gratitude. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the heartbreak and loneliness that had driven her to answer a mail-order bride advertisement. She thought about arriving in Redding, terrified and desperate, expecting nothing but survival. And she thought about the lonely cowboy who had offered her a bargain, who had slowly and surely worked his way into her heart, who had shown her that love was not only possible but could be more wonderful than anything she had ever imagined. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked, coming to stand beside her. "Everything," Penelope said. "The whole long, beautiful journey from there to here." "It has been quite a journey," Isaac agreed, "and I would not change a moment of it. Not even the parts where I was stubborn and difficult," Penelope teased. "Especially those parts," Isaac said with a grin. "You have never been boring, Penelope Emerson. That is for certain." As the party continued around them, they found their way back to the porch, their favorite spot, the place where so many important moments of their life together had unfolded. They sat in the rocking chairs that Isaac had made years ago, watching their family celebrate their love. 50 years, Penelope said wonderingly. "Half a century." "Best 50 years of my life," Isaac replied, "and hopefully we will have a few more." They did have a few more years, precious years filled with quiet joy and deep contentment. They watched Walter take over full operation of the ranch, seeing their son become a leader and a success in his own right. They watched their grandchildren grow and start families of their own. They watched the world change and evolve, but their love remained constant. In the spring of 1932, Isaac fell ill. It started as a cough, nothing serious at first, but it developed into pneumonia. Despite the best efforts of the doctor from Sacramento, he grew weaker. Penelope rarely left his bedside, holding his hand and talking to him about their life together, about all the beautiful memories they had created. "I am not afraid," Isaac told her one evening when they were alone. "I've had a good life, Penelope, better than good. I have been loved by you, and that is more than any man deserves." "You deserve everything," Penelope said fiercely. "You are the best man I have ever known." "Promise me something," Isaac said, his voice weak. "Promise me you will be happy. Do not spend whatever time you have left mourning me." Live, Penelope. Enjoy our family, enjoy the ranch, enjoy the life we built. I promise, Penelope said, though she could not imagine being happy without him. Isaac Emerson died on a clear May morning with Penelope holding his hand and their children and grandchildren gathered around. He was 79 years old, and he passed peacefully, a slight smile on his face. The funeral was held at the ranch, and it seemed like half the county attended. People came from miles around to pay their respects to the man who had been honest, fair, and kind throughout his long life. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, a spot he had always loved, where he could watch over the land and the family he had cherished. Penelope stood at the graveside, dry-eyed and strong, her children around her. She had cried all her tears in private, and now she owed it to Isaac's memory to be brave. He would not want her to fall apart. He would want her to live, and she did live. For another 12 years, Penelope lived at the ranch, watching her great-grandchildren grow, seeing the legacy she and Isaac had built continue to flourish. She finished her family history, a thick volume filled with stories and memories that became treasured by the entire family. She taught until she was too frail to continue, and then she sat on the porch and told stories to any grandchild or great-grandchild who would listen. She never remarried. How could she, when she had already had the love of a lifetime? Isaac had been her one true love, and she remained faithful to his memory until the end. Penelope, Emerson died in her sleep in 1944, at the age of 88. They buried her next to Isaac on the hill, and the entire family gathered once more to say goodbye. Her great-great-grandchildren stood at the grave, hearing stories about the couple who had started it all, the mail-order bride and the lonely cowboy who had found love against all odds. The ranch continued, passed down through the generations. The house was expanded and modernized, but the original structure remained, and the porch where Isaac and Penelope had spent so many evenings was preserved as it had been. It became a family tradition to sit there in the evenings, to watch the sunset over the golden hills, and to remember the two people who had built this legacy of love and family. And sometimes, on quiet summer evenings when the air was still and the stars were bright, those sitting on the porch swore they could feel a presence, a warmth that seemed to wrap around them like an embrace. They said it was Isaac and Penelope, still watching over the family they had created, still loving each other across the veil of death. The story of the mail-order bride who arrived thinking love was impossible, and the lonely cowboy who made her believe again, was told and retold through the years. It became a family legend, a reminder that love could be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest love stories began with nothing more than hope and courage. And on the hill where they were buried, two headstones stood side by side. Isaac Emerson, 1853 to 1932, beloved husband, father, and grandfather. Penelope Emerson, 1856 to 1944, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. And beneath those inscriptions, words that Penelope herself had chosen years before, together in life, together forever. It was a simple epitaph for a simple truth. They had found each other when both were lost. They had built a life together when both thought happiness was beyond reach. They had loved each other deeply and truly for more than 50 years, and that love had created something that would last long after they were gone. The ranch still stands today, in the capable hands of the 6th generation of Emersons. The family has grown and spread across California and beyond, but they all trace their roots back to that dusty afternoon in June of 1878, when a frightened young woman stepped off a stagecoach and a lonely cowboy offered her a bargain that changed both their lives forever. In the house, in a place of honor, sits the leather-bound journal that saved the ranch all those years ago. Next to it is Penelope's family history, worn from being read and reread by countless descendants. And on the wall hangs a photograph, taken on Isaac and Penelope's 50th anniversary, showing an elderly couple gazing at each other with unmistakable love. Those who look at that photograph can see the truth written in their faces. This was not a marriage of convenience or necessity. This was not a business arrangement that happened to work out. This was true love, the kind that transcends time and circumstance, the kind that builds legacies and creates families, the kind that reminds us all that no matter how broken we feel, no matter how impossible love seems, there is always hope. Because somewhere out there is someone who will make us believe again. Someone who will take our hand and walk with us through the hard times and the good times. Someone who will build a life with us that is richer and fuller than anything we could have built alone. For Penelope and Isaac, they found that someone in each other, in the most unlikely of circumstances, in the wild and beautiful landscape of 1870s California. Their love story is not just a tale of the past. It is a living legacy, carried forward in the hearts of their descendants, in the ranch they built, in the family they created. It is a reminder that love is always possible, that second chances exist, that broken hearts can heal and love again. And perhaps most importantly, it is a testament to the transformative power of love. Penelope arrived in Redding broken and hopeless, convinced that love was impossible. Isaac was isolated and lonely, expecting nothing more from life than hard work and solitude. Together, they created something beautiful. Together, they proved that love is not only possible but essential, that it is the force that makes life worth living, that transforms houses into homes and strangers into family. As the sun sets over the ranch on any given evening, painting the California hills in shades of gold and amber, the spirit of their love still lingers. It is in the laughter of children playing in the yard. It is in the quiet conversations of couples sitting on the porch. It is in the gentle wind that rustles through the oak trees and the distant sound of cattle lowing in the fields. Isaac and Penelope, Emerson built more than a ranch. They built a testament to the enduring power of love, to the strength of partnership, to the beauty of two broken people finding wholeness in each other. Their story began with fear and uncertainty, with a lonely cowboy and a desperate woman making the best of impossible circumstances. But it became something extraordinary, a love that lasted a lifetime and continues to inspire generations. And that, in the end, is the greatest legacy anyone can leave. Not wealth or property, though those things matter, but love. True, deep, abiding love that changes lives and creates families and reminds us all that no matter how dark things seem, there is always hope for happiness, always the possibility of finding that one person who will make us believe in love again. The mail-order bride who arrived thinking love was impossible learned the truth that summer of 1878. Love is always possible. It just takes courage to reach for it, wisdom to nurture it, and two hearts brave enough to take a chance on something that seems impossible. Penelope and Isaac took that chance, and in doing so they created a love story for the ages, a reminder that the best love stories are the ones we write ourselves, one day, one moment, one choice at a time.